in my marriage, there was a lot of times I was really frustrated, angry, prideful, and arrogant. And then that would cause Katie, my wife, to feel pretty hurt. And a lot of times she'd be kind of anxious and worried about what could go wrong. And we played these two patterns out of me being angry and frustrated as I'm striving to take care of the family, and then Katie being hurt by it and then feeling like maybe she had to walk around on eggshells. We were just playing out the most common issues that men and women have in a marriage. Today, we're bringing on the experts on how to work on your marriage so that it becomes a place of beauty, love, joy, and inspiration. We have Matt and Ash, the yoga couple, who've written one of the greatest selling books of all time in the field of relationships. It's The Inner Work of Relationships. I'm so excited to dive into how to make all of our relationships loving and peaceful. Let's rock. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill, and I've spent the last 15 years mastering the art of lasting happiness. Look, happiness isn't just a feeling. It is a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn and master. This show is your training ground. Let your Good Mood Revolution begin now. So there are some people who come into your life and make a massive impact. Two of those people are here with us today, Mathew, Micheletti, and Ashley Cottrell. Matt and Ash, the yoga couple. Welcome to Good Mood Revolution.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much for having us. We're
stoked
so
to be
excited.
back.
Yeah.
So I met these two amazing people because I read their first book, The Inner Work, which has become one of the best-selling spiritual books of all time at this point. And they followed that book up with The Inner Work of Relationships, which I have just poured over this text. It has been one of the greatest books I've ever read. And on the back of the book, it says, if you are a human and you want to be in love, this book is for you. And I think we could say, if you are a human, this book is for you.
We'll take it. We agree.
We could agree with that for sure.
And, and it's, before we jumped on here, I just told Matt and Ash that they are my dream podcast to interview. So having them here today to talk about relationships is really a really important topic, because our life is just a series of relationships, really. So I want to kick it off with a question to you all. What is the biggest misconception about relationships that leads us to suffer?
I think it's that you're going to find the one. You're going to just come upon the one. And when you find this person, you're going to have your dream life and everything's going to fall into place. You're going to have this epic romance, and this person is like the missing piece to the puzzle that's going to make all of your dreams come true. And while there is a part of that is true, that you're deserving of a amazing epic romance, the missing component is it's not something that you're just going to find. It's something that you're going to co-create together with this person. It's something that two people are going to come together to consciously create, not just come upon. And at first that can sound a little discouraging, because it's like, oh, I'm not just going to magically find this person. But in a lot of ways, it actually gives you hope, because it means that no matter what type of relationship you're experiencing with your partner currently, you've been married, for 20 years, or you're in a brand new relationship, or you're, hitting a wall in your relationship, it means that there's hope that the two of you can come together to create that dream romance that you were envisioning. It just takes two people doing the inner work.
Yeah. And I think the other misconception that dovetails off of that is that your dream relationship shouldn't be hard, that you shouldn't be triggered, that you won't have issues, and that you won't have to work on anything. I think that is one of the most massive misconceptions, again, is that not only will you find this one, but that it'll just always be perfect. And that as soon as there's triggers and discomforts and there's things you have to work on, the world is like inundating us with this conception, this misconception, to build off that question, this misconception that is the sign, right? And it's like, well, there's a lot of nuance there. it could be, and we understand that there's a lot of caveats in the very beginning of the book of there's definitely situations where you shouldn't be working on it and it's probably not going to heal and it's probably time to walk away. But most of the time it's super premature. And most of the time you could be with that partner could be perfect for you, because a lot of times what happens in your ideal relationship is actually that you subconsciously attracted someone who does trigger you because you're going to heal together. And on the other side of being with someone who you're getting stuff brought up with, like triggers or old past stuff, those are opportunities to heal. And a healed couple that has stood the test of time and healed together is vastly stronger than a couple who's never been triggered, just peacefully, like feels like nothing's ever come up, because that's usually an illusion. And it usually means that there's a superficiality going on, because if you've never been triggered, you've never had anything come up, nothing's ever come up, that's probably a sign that the relationship doesn't have a lot of depth, because it's impossible. This is the final, I'd say, third misconception on this topic is it's impossible to be fully healed and then enter a relationship and think, oh, I did all my healing, we're never going to get triggered. And these are some of the biggest things we go over right in the beginning of the book is we got to just like let that go once and for all, because holding on to these illusions really set us up for failure. Because again, you might end the relationship, you might walk away too soon.
Yeah, a lot of people will say, I'm working on myself before I get into a relationship. And while there is a healthy part of that, the misconception is that, yeah, and you're going to get into a relationship and you're still going to keep working on yourself. And your partner's
no way
still
around
going to
it.
trigger you. And the work isn't going to end. You're not going to be a finalized, completed piece and be like, okay, now I'm ready for a relationship because I've been working on myself for the past year.
Yeah.
And as soon as there's any trigger, it's a red flag. It's like, no. That's perfectly normal. And now continue that work while you're in relationship with someone, because this is truly the work. It's with another person. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to not be triggered when you're alone. It's another to be in relationship and actually be faced with those things and see it through, face that discomfort and come back to love together.
Well, and a trippy thing too, on the last note on this, is it's actually impossible to see certain things by yourself, because they're so deep in your subconscious that they require another person to surface it. And so you might think you're straight up enlightened single. You might. But as soon as you get in a relationship, all of a sudden you will inevitably find out, oh man, I got all kinds of stuff still in there. How come I didn't see this by myself? And it's like, oh, because it's so in your subconscious that it can only be brought to the surface by another person. And that can lead to, again, a huge misconception of like, I thought I could do all my healing before the relationship. It's like, no, that's not realistic or attainable. What is more attainable is to say, I'm going to find a partner who I can do this with and co-create with. And now we got a real shot at a beautiful, conscious relationship.
When Katie and I had our first child, Harper, and maybe we'd also had Cam, I was working with a coach, and he invited Katie to come over to a coaching session. And I remember I'm sitting in his office on a couch, and Katie's sitting there too. And his name was Scott. And Scott says to Katie, she said, "Katie, how do you experience Matt?" And she said, sometimes he's really stressed out. And sometimes this stress is so heavy that I feel like I have to walk around on eggshells, because if I say the wrong thing, it is going to create a lot of problems. And in that moment, I had never heard these things. I had zero recognition that this was the way that I was being experienced with her. And, and that was something that I needed to work on and I needed to grow from. How can we find these blind spots? These things that we didn't know, that we're completely blind to, that we didn't even know that we needed to work on, that this relationship can bring up.
I really like that example, because a lot of the time those clues are there, but we're not actively listening. Like our partner is likely telling us in a numerous amount of ways how they're experiencing us, throughout a day to day, how their nervous system is responding to us, how their mood is reacting to us, how the day goes in reflection of our interactions. And, maybe there is little bits of feedback, but until we make, the unconscious conscious, nothing's going to happen. So if we're unconsciously going throughout our day and we're not paying attention to that, it's not valuable information.
Yeah.
But if we go into our relationship with a, conscious awareness, like we do in maybe some other aspects of our life, maybe we have goals in business or our fitness journey, and we're really attuned to like the feedback we're getting from our efforts, from the workouts we're doing, from the food intake we're doing, the calories, or what's happening in our business. We have to be that attuned
to the feedback
we're getting in our relationship. And if we are, and we turn that conscious awareness on, there's so much valuable information there that we can learn, adapt, adjust, and accommodate. We have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear.
Yeah, I think it's really that. It's staying open, because ironically, the feedback is always there. Like I've never met, like, let's put it this way. I've never worked with a couple where like it's not obviously being stated, because here's the funny thing, like with your example, a lot of times like you could have been told that could have went in one ear and out the other, and you could have said that's her problem, she's too sensitive. And
exactly. As Ash said, the issue's probably saying it. She was.
Yeah.
And yet I wasn't prioritizing that. I'm like, oh, it's, no big deal. Of course, the business is really stressful right now.
Exactly.
Sure. I was justifying.
Exactly.
I was just justifying it away and not seeing it as something that I actually needed to address.
Exactly.
I also really like that idea of, I was so intense on business goals and growing a business, and yet I wasn't putting an intensity on my marriage goals,
right,
and growing in my relationship.
And oftentimes we aren't motivated to do that until something's at risk, problem. Right? Yep. Like, let's say the marriage gets so on the rocks that it's a divorce is being talked about, and now all of a sudden our conscious awareness turns on because the loss is so great that it forces us to look at it. So that just, it goes to show that sometimes we're taking our relationship and our partner for granted, and how valuable it is, and how it really is the bedrock and the foundation of the happiness in our lives. Because without our partner, without our family, what is all the rest of it for? But yet it can be the thing we take for granted the most and put the least amount of conscious awareness into, and, put our conscious awareness into all these other places. And so, this book is really about turning on that conscious awareness in your relationship, because we have achieved it and done it in so many different areas of our lives, especially people in the self-help community who are, into health, into business, into, motivation. It's like, take that same effort and apply it into your family, apply it into your relationship, and just watch what happens.
Yeah. And it's building off that idea of misconception. In the beginning of the book, we really point out how another huge misconception with relationships is, again, that you don't have to put any effort in. And we actually use the analogy of going to the gym. If you think you're just going to get your dream body doing nothing, any trainer would be like, you're literally delusional. You're literally crazy. Like, you think you're going to get a six pack and like be super strong and all this with literally never lifting a weight. Like, what are you talking about? So it sounds absurd if we put it in different, same with business, right? We could say, I'm going to be super successful. And it's like, but I'm not going to do any business. It's just going to happen for me. It's like, okay, sure, dude. Like, good luck with that. So why is it that we go into relationships and we say, I'm just going to do nothing. I'm just going to be what I already am. And I'm just going to do exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to have the most perfect relationship. And I'm going to be so happy and in love. It's
because
bizarre.
The movies, right, Matt? Isn't it the movies? The movies say you just meet the right person, and then it ends with happily ever after.
I know. And we don't ever get to see the end, because it usually is just like when we were looking at movies too, we got thinking about it. We're like, if you think about those movies, they're only showing them meet. They're never showing like 10 years later. They're like fighting and bickering, and they're like triggered and they're unhappy. No, you're right. It's sold on this idea of we don't see the reality of the after effect, right? It's just the meeting portion and the romance of falling for the person. So it's no wonder that we have now marriage rates coming down, divorce rates going up. We have less families being created. And it's all because people are just addicted to the dating process. And it's like, well, technically they've been subconsciously programmed to only do the dating and finding process. And they don't know how to sustain it. They only know how to fall in love. And they're like, wow, you're amazing. And then like a week later, they're like, wait, I don't know how to do this anymore. I only know how to go through the romantic falling phase. So,
but the good news is that this like vision of this easeful relationship that's almost in the background, like your life is just going so good and you have this amazing partner and you're so happy to come home to them and you have fun. And then you have these other aspects of your life. When your relationship becomes, a focal point is usually when there's a problem, right? And then all of a sudden now you realize like, okay, this is really stressful. This is actually taking me out of my other aspects of life. The good news is that if you can get your relationship to this healthy, homeostasis, you could get to accountability is what we say in the book. You can then experience all the benefits and the rewards like ease and romance and love. And that stuff is just a natural side effect of you doing the prerequisite work. Yeah. So same with your business. If you can get your business, into the green and you're doing good and you can maintain from there. All your
systems, yeah.
But we don't view relationship like this. Like I need to put work into the relationship and get it to this level of it working really well, that it is so easeful,
It works for you.
And if any crisis does come up, we are so well prepared and we have such great communication and we have such great intimacy and connection that it will feel like not that big of a deal because it's such a well-oiled machine. But we have to work out the relationship to get it to that point.
The wait is finally over. The Good Mood Revolution book is officially available for pre-order on Amazon today. You can go to Amazon and look for Good Mood Revolution book. And in this book, you're going to find the 8 bad moods that get in the way of your happiness. You're going to learn strategies on how to overcome each of these 8 negative thoughts. They're all lies anyway. And then what the thought patterns are that make us happy every single day. You're also going to learn strategies that can make you really feel fulfilled in your life and make other people around you feel fulfilled as well. So go on Amazon, look for Good Mood Revolution book, and order yours today. Let's get into the work.
Sure.
So I know the book really well because I've just really enjoyed it. But the person listening doesn't have all of this background that we've had for the last years we've known each other. What is the work that gets us to accountability, that gets us to ease? What typically do couples need to work on most?
So doing the work, I think the simplest introduction for someone who, for example, has not read the books, one of the ways we like to word it in both the books is it's really seeing that any time that you are not in a state of flow and peace and you're confident, you're cruising along in a more positively charged state. And every time that you fall from that is one of the biggest observations of a trigger. Something's coming up. Something is taking your joy. It's taking you out of your innate state of bliss and wonder, like the child. That's how we were all born technically. And then slowly we started accumulating these layers that take us from that happiness, take us from that freedom. And those triggers usually are connected to some sort of underlying trauma or just negative programming, negative self-belief, something that is somehow limiting us, and it's robbing our joy. And so doing the inner work is really about becoming aware of that and noticing, whoa, man, I was in such a good mood. And then let's say your partner said something or did something and you're just pissed off the rest of the day now. And it's like, whoa, man, why? We should look at that. And so inner work is about identifying, here's a good way to put it. It's like you're identifying the ways you are being controlled and self-sabotaging, things that are impacting and influencing you. And all it could take is your partner to say a couple trigger words that maybe your mom or your dad used to say to you. And it's connected now to this whole subconscious, traumatic story. And all of a sudden your whole day is ruined. And now you're fighting because of that trigger. So inner work is about revealing those triggers, identifying them, seeing what they're connected with, looking at the root program, looking at the beliefs you have connected to that. And most importantly, then uprooting that and realizing that none of it is true. It's just a conditioned response that now is controlling your whole life and you didn't even realize it.
And so as we're navigating life together, let's become aware of those opportunities through those moments where we fall from happiness, we fall from peace, we fall ultimately away from love. So like the book says, if you're a human and you want to be in love, this book is for you, because it's going to show you all the reasons you fall out of love in your life. And if you can become aware of that, then you can do something about it. It's becoming aware of all the things that are taking you away from love and saying, let's put a magnifying glass on that. Let's look at it. Let's have a companion who I know is going to support me and be there for me and not be offended by that. And say, hey, I'm your biggest ally. I want to be here for you. Let's work through it. In what ways am I contributing to that? Because I definitely don't want to be a contribution to continuing your trauma. I want to be somebody who shows you a way out. And so this is kind of like a conscious agreement between two people to go into a relationship with this completely, different approach than what we're taught a relationship should be, which is just easy.
I didn't even know, though. I didn't even know that I wanted to be feeling in love all the time in life. I was unconscious to it at the time. Again, I was prioritizing success.
Mm-hmm.
And if success cost me the feeling of love, I was totally okay to pay that price.
Right.
Why would somebody want to be feeling love all the time? What's the benefit of that?
I think what you could think of it as is like, it's feeling love is a good way to really show how it's universal. Is think of it as you're in love with your life. So even with you wanting to be business, like successful and wealthy in business, your ultimate subconscious drive was to love your life. So technically you might not have realized it, but you were sold on the promise that being rich would make you feel love. So technically we could look at anybody's behavior, and even if it is destructive, and deep down the hope they're hoping is that somehow they will love their life, even if it makes zero sense. It doesn't have to, even if it's like something totally negative, like they could want to be like a criminal or like do something super violating to people. But for some reason, if we really look at it, they will think that they are being favored in some weird way. And they'll think that, man, I really love my life. I'm a badass criminal. Or I'm a really like whatever. Like they will get some sort of pride from it. And
this is really good that you're saying this, because this reflects the outline in the book, is that as you go through the book, you're introduced to what we call themes of consciousness. And there are basically 15 different perspectives or viewpoints of life, or 15 different stages, we say, of self-esteem development. And every single one of those has their own motivations, right? So like you're describing, you wanted to feel success. So you were experiencing a lot of willingness. Maybe there was some pride in there. Who knows? Okay.
A lot of pride, right?
Right. And so if you can become aware of those motivations, you can become aware of what theme of consciousness you're in. And it's really helpful, because when we can identify the theme we're in, let's say you're in pride, then we're able to say, oh, this is how I show up to life. This is how I show up to my relationship. This is how my partner experiences me, because everything is revolving around this theme of pride. And then we get to say, okay, well, like, what benefit is that to you? Like, what are you really getting out of being in this theme of pride? And at what detriment is it to you? And once you become aware of the detriment, you're usually motivated to transition out of it in some way, if it's coming from a wounded place, because nobody wants to like sit in their own detriment and their own self-sabotage. So,
it was suffering. And Katie had described it in that coaching session that, hey, you're so stressed out, your suffering is affecting me.
Right.
And Matt, I think you nailed it. And I was asking a question so that we all could understand that I was prioritizing being successful because I thought that meant that I would love my life. And that I would sacrifice everything now so that one future day down the road, we would be so happy. Right. And that was, since then I've learned that, hey, we can only be happy now. So we need to love the journey. And any time we're falling out of love, we're falling out of our happiness. And if I'm not happy right now, then what's the point? Why would I suffer right now if there's another choice?
And that's really it, to build off that last little bit. Why would I suffer if there's another choice? That is like the foundation of doing inner work and the foundation of the themes of consciousness, because it's the epiphany of the one way and the one view I've been approaching my life is not the only way. It's not the one and only way. There's actually different approaches I could take that would be vastly more rewarding both now and in the future.
So what's the most common theme of consciousness that couples struggle with?
Yeah, so I think off the top of my head, the most generalized pattern I've seen in the years of counseling couples is, for the man, it's typically wounds of violation, which is anger, and insecurity, which is pride. I would say those are the two. Like, I've never met, for example, a husband or a boyfriend in the relationship who's not doing that and not stuck in it. Let me just put it that way. That's how common it is. There's obviously others, and it's very case by case. But I would say the most generalized common one, yes, the men tend to be struggling with anger and the wound of violation, and the wound of insecurity, which is pride. And then for the woman, in the wife or the girlfriend, theirs is most commonly fear, which is the wound of distrust, and perhaps overwhelm. And here's a really fascinating thing with doing inner work and knowing about the themes of consciousness, how it changes your perspective of reality, is you start to see how like these feed each other. So when the husband is angry and feels violated and prideful, that's all disempowered. All of these are disempowered states. So that's a disempowered state. Well, women are security motivated. So then they feel freaking paranoid and scared because he's feeling disempowered and he's angry and he's prideful, which does not make them feel secure. And so then they feel afraid and overwhelmed because they're like, my partner is going to destroy us with his anger, with his pride.
This was exactly what was going on. This was exactly what was going on with Katie and I, like, to the
It's
T.
super common.
Are you looking to take your happiness to another level? If you're looking to be more successful, we need to be happier, because success and happiness go hand in hand. But sometimes we get stuck in thought patterns we don't even know are holding us back. And we need a coach or a mentor to see things we can't see with our own eyes. I've had coaches and mentors help me access levels of happiness I couldn't have achieved without them. I'm now offering that same service to a small, select number of people. If you think one-on-one coaching could elevate your happiness, go to mattoneil.com and click the coaching tab to learn more. I look forward to talking with you. Let's talk about healing the wound of violation, anger, and the wound of insecurity. And Katie's number one wound was the wound of distrust and fear, anxiousness and fear and afraid and worrying about things and wanting to make sure that we were safe and that we were secure. That's definitely a big motivator for her. And it wasn't necessarily like my biggest motivator.
Yeah. So hold on real quick and then you go for it. So to wrap up that feedback loop for people to hear, because it's really trippy when you start to identify it. So they feed each other, because then when the woman is feeling afraid and overwhelmed and not trusting, men are praise and admiration motivated. So then when she's afraid, we feel more violated and insecure because we're like, come on, like, you should be proud of me. You should think I'm awesome. And like, I'm crushing it. And she's like, no, you're actually freaking terrifying me. Because women don't, this is the biggest misconception that guys have, is they think anger and pride is like dominant and cool and strong. And women can sense right through that. And they're like, that is disempowered. Because if you truly, the trippiest thing, and this is our next book, the trippiest thing for guys to realize is true power is calm and confident and just chill and nonchalant. But again, going back to the movies and indoctrination, the male indoctrination is that being prideful, competitive, and angry makes you superior. And it's like, that actually is the biggest red flag of all, because that's all disempowered behavior. A true empowered man does not behave that way. And then likewise, a woman, when she truly feels secure, doesn't distrust you and not admire you and not praise you. It's an irony. But when, like, the last thing I'll say on this that's really funny that I always tell husbands is I'm like, all right, let's say you're doing a project. Now, your pride and anger, you really want to show how hard it is. You want to be pissed off about it. And you think your wife's going to be like, wow, that must be really hard. Like, you're really struggling. You're angry. You're frustrated. And then you're really cocky when you finish it. Wow, honey, that must have been really tough. I really appreciate you. That
This was
must have been
actually
hard.
a breakthrough for us.
This was a breakthrough for us. I had this big epiphany too, because I was like,
no, I had to tell you. I was like,
no, I know, but I'm saying I realized I was doing it. You pointed out to me.
I was like, why when you get so angry, like, what's the payoff? Like, when you're complaining and you're getting aggro about, and he's like, because I want you to see, look how hard this
I'm overcoming for us.
hard this stuff was. I'm doing for us. Like, do you see how like how much effort I had to put in? This was hard and I did it. And I'm like, wow, it makes me think you need help. Like, you need me to call a handyman to help you because you seem like you not got this. And he was like, whoa, that is like the opposite of what I want you to see me as. I'm like, I see you. Unfortunately, I'm seeing you as weak, disempowered,
and
when
that
you're
struggling. And so it's a real irony. And I always challenge husbands to try it. And I say, so now do that same project and make it seem so easy. Like you didn't even break a sweat. And I was like, and watch how she will just like quietly admire, be like, damn, that's my man. Like he makes everything look easy.
You know, when I was reading about the wound of overwhelm, and it's the type A personality, like people will say, oh, I'm a type A personality. Everything has to be perfect. If it's going to get done right, I'm going to do it myself. And they say that like, that's a really positive thing.
Totally.
And with competitive, right? I have people who come to interview to work with me and they're like, I'm a super competitive person. And that's like a really positive thing. It's a really positive attribute in their mind that I'm really competitive. And that's great. That was one of the things that I really had to sink in with me to let it go, to let go of the competitiveness and let go of the pride is that, well, just because I'm no longer competitive and prideful and insecure, it doesn't mean I won't be successful still.
100%.
And that was what I was saying, the either or, is that I was like, oh, okay, so I can let go of the downside, but I can still retain all the positive things I got from learning what I learned to be successful like that.
Yes. And ironically, it's everything improves because if we look at it just from a pure like, balance standpoint, it's like you're swimming with a bunch of weight on you. And it's like, hey, you've become a really strong swimmer. Yes. But like, you don't have to keep dragging that weight. Like imagine
you let go of the weight and you swim twice as fast.
You'll be if you let that go. Exactly.
That's the exact analogy I used in my book too, was that you're carrying weight and you literally can just cut it.
Yes.
And you'll run twice as fast. So anger, violation, for me, I was suppressing it, but it was tremendous. I had so much anger and rage that I had all these back problems. My back was so sore. I felt like I needed surgery. I actually went into a surgeon's office. I said, please cut me and fix this back problem.
Like, fix this. Yeah.
I was seeing chiropractors. I had special pillows. I was using ice packs, warm packs, all this pain. And I learned that I was super angry about all of my responsibility. I didn't want to admit I was angry that I had to take care of children because I loved my children. So like true love and admiration for these children, and at the same time, crazy amounts of responsibility. And I didn't want to admit that I was angry about having to improve my relationship with my wife. I loved my wife. But it was a lot of work too at the same time. So I suppressed these thoughts because they weren't appropriate, that I was angry about them. They didn't make sense. And I pushed all of that rage into my back. And I had just crazy back problems. Ended up learning about that from a movie called All the Rage.
Oh, wow.
Saved by Sarno. And this guy named Dr. Sarno said that the majority of all back surgeries are really due to suppressed rage.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, we can see that for sure.
And he said as soon as you admit that it's actually you're really angry about your responsibilities, you'll stop doing it. you'll stop doing it to yourself. So I didn't go through a process of like not feeling violated by all my responsibilities. I just admitted that there was a lot of anger about it.
Yeah.
And that admission is what had me stop being so angry about it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I love that you're saying that, because in the Inner Work of Relationships book, we really encourage that exact dialogue. Is your partner needs to be a safe person for you to admit these vulnerabilities to. You need to realize that they're not going to reject you for that feeling that you had. They're going to want to support you and say, wow, you're feeling so violated by carrying all this responsibility. I see you, you're heard. Like, that's valid. And what can I do to help you? Instead of, you shouldn't feel that way. That's not appropriate. How dare you? This is what we're afraid of, you know? And so, and this is how the relationships deteriorate and fall apart, is not having that ability to communicate at that level with somebody. And so the book is teaching you how to have that kind of dialogue, to become self-aware enough, like you were, to know this is coming from anger and violation. Like, how do you even figure that out? Also, the fact that Katie was the one who brought to your awareness that you were angry and stressed. Your partner is your biggest mirror. Usually they see stuff about us that we cannot see in ourselves. They're like the first canary in the coal mine. They can see us way before we see ourselves.
She saw me completely. Like it was obvious to her.
Yeah. And so if we lean into that instead of being, in denial of it or offended by it, or because the ego wants to be offended, we're like, how dare you think of me this way?
Yeah, of course. My very first thought as she's saying this is I'm defensive.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm like, I can't believe you. Like, after all I do for you and this family, that's how you see me?
Yes. And it's hard. But if we can humble ourselves enough to say, wait a second, this is valuable information. This person actually loves me. They're not trying to make me feel bad about myself. They're not trying to shame me. They're not trying to hurt me. They actually want me to get better. They want to be closer to me. They want to have a better life with me. They're bringing this to my attention because they see a future with me. They're trying to hold on to me. If we can see it that way and humble ourselves to listen, it becomes the most valuable insight and information. Your partner is your most valuable asset. Nobody's going to tell you the truth like your partner is. And so it starts to feel good then, because it's like, wow. And you can start to listen to them and hear that feedback and have this type of dialogue where you realize, like, Katie's there for you to help relieve that violation now that you guys have this open communication about it. But how do we even get there? And it's like, we can't get there if we don't have the knowledge. And so the book is like, here's the knowledge. Here's how to see these things. Here's how to know where this is coming from. Here's how to communicate that violation wound. And as a partner, here's how you can support your partner who has the violation wound. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's a map.
We just heard from Mathew, Micheletti, and Ashley Cottrell, Matt and Ash, the yoga couple, on the struggles that are most common in marriages and relationships. That's not the end of the story, though. There is a whole nother 7 levels of consciousness beyond the 8 levels of struggle that we just talked about, where relationships get really fun and harmonious and loving and easy and like just the greatest bliss you could ever experience. This will continue. Next week, tune back in on Monday morning. We're going to go into the highest states you can experience in relationships, and we're going to teach you how you can actually access these states and live your marriage and your best life as heaven on earth. So excited to see you next week and to talk about this. Talk to you then. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.